Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path Podcast. I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Nicola Navon. I was actually on her podcast, Divine Union, just a few weeks ago. So highly recommend heading over to her podcast to listen to our episode swap. But I'm super excited to bring her into this space because when we connected and I got into her work a bit, I just saw so much synergy between her coaching, my coaching, the things that her clients see, the types of things my clients see. And as some of you might know, relationships is a big piece of the work that I do in my Rise and Align coaching program. And it really has been just a natural evolution of, focusing on habits, focusing on mindset, and then relationships just are bound to come up when we're talking about holistic health. And so I talk about this a lot about how relationships really are our mirrors and our teachers. And there's so much that we can learn based off of how we relate. So this is a super juicy episode. I'm excited for you all to connect with Nicola. So she is a communication and leadership coach, and her expertise is really in the masculine and feminine dynamics. She specializes in helping driven couples create a deeper connection and lasting passion through masterful communication, which we'll talk a lot about today, embodied leadership, and an understanding of masculine and feminine dynamics. Definitely one of my favorite topics to explore. So with a decade of experience in communication and psychology, Nicola has applied this expertise to now help her clients transform their partnerships through relationship coaching. So if you are seeking a relationship coach, she is definitely your girl. She has worked with clients worldwide, including top performance coaches and successful CEOs, to create meaningful connections and lasting intimacy. So really excited to share this conversation. Let's go ahead and dive in. Welcome to the Illuminated Path Podcast. I'm your host, Liv, founder of Eno Wellness Collective. My wellness journey started with yoga, which led me down the path of exploring healing modalities like meditation, breath work, sound healing, mindset work, and so much more. This exploration inspired my mission to help others find what lights them up. Get comfortable and curious as we learn from experts, teachers, and creators who are lighting up their communities and living an inspired, expansive life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path Podcast, and excited to welcome to the show today, Nicola.
Thank you so much for having me, Liv.
So I've been super excited to have this conversation since we, connected through social media, and we're exploring kind of each other's worlds. And when I connected with you, I knew I wanted to get you on the podcast because what you focus on in your area of expertise is something that comes up all the time in my coaching programs and within my community. And just relationships and leadership is becoming a much bigger piece of the puzzle that I see in transformation and in clients. And so I'm excited to dive into your work today. So before we, get into relationships, talk about, conscious communication, I would love for you to share a little bit about what has led you to this work. I know we were just talking before we hit record on you now being in Chicago, but a traveler. And so I imagine that you have a story. So I would love to hear a little bit about what led you to this work in relationships and communication.
So much, Liv. And for me, I always wanted deep intimacy in partnership, but I could never actually cultivate it. And I was in these relationships with these people that couldn't give me what I wanted and couldn't deepen the connection. And I deeply desired that. And so I had one relationship that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was this unhealthy, toxic relationship. And getting out of it, I said to myself, okay, what does this say about me that I end up with partners that can never give me what I want? And I really started looking at myself. And in this time, I started to working and strengthening my sense of self and my core. And what do I mean by that? I grew up in an environment where I was a people pleaser. I was the most sensitive one in my family dynamic, and no one could understand it. And so I internalized that as something's wrong with me. I'm too much. And so in my partnerships, I attracted partners that in turn kept that story alive. They couldn't give me what I wanted. And after this relationship, when I was when I did this work to really understand myself, what I realized is my own masculine and feminine energetics were off balance. Now, what do I mean by that? I was a people pleaser. I was catering to my partners, but I wasn't asserting what is it I desire? What is it I want in partnership? I wasn't being vulnerable. I wasn't demonstrating intimacy myself. Now that requires, why I say masculine and feminine energies is, it requires the feminine to go in to test into my intuition. What is it I'm feeling? What is my heart saying? What do I want in this partnership? And then on the masculine side, that's me asserting what I want. I want us to spend more time together. I want us to talk about future. Yeah, I'm feeling hurt because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, this really touched me. I love you so much. And I was waiting for my partners to lead the direction of the intimacy instead of taking ownership from this place of groundedness and wholeness. I'm going to pause there. It's a long story, but yeah, how's that landing?
Oh, I literally just had a conversation the other night all about this topic, and the feminine and masculine energy comes up so much in conversations, obviously about relationships, but just that connection back to your intuition, like you said, of like the feminine, kind of going inward and checking in with the emotions, but then also having that like balance of you do need to actually communicate and you do need to actually speak it forward to say what exactly you do want to say. So I know that most people that become coaches or begin to do some type of work, it's often from lived experience. So it makes sense that you have experienced that like with your partners and then have changed that into like, okay, how do I now share my gift? So was there a moment that for you, I know you mentioned like you were seeing the pattern with your partners, but was there something that sort of like that aha moment of like, oh, maybe I'm meant to teach this? Like, was there something like that happened for you? And if so, when was that?
Yeah, I love that question. For me, I had a moment where I became, I don't often tell the story. So I'm thinking, do I want to share this story? But I will share this story and wrap it into the work because this was the catalyst, but this wasn't the work. Yeah. And I had this moment where I was on a mushroom journey. Yeah. A solo mushroom journey. And I became a man. I became a hyper masculine man. Yeah. With some, semblances of my past, some connections and ties to my childhood, yeah, to growing up. And in this experience, I realized that all of my expectations around the masculine that I carried towards my father dynamic, towards other men in my childhood, I projected on my partners. Men can never hold space for me. They don't create safety for me. They don't understand me. I'm not seen by the masculine. And I had all of this resentment towards the masculine because oftentimes when we feel these feelings from the father wound towards our father or the masculine figure in our life, we carry that in our romantic relationships. And so as a result of that, I realized, wow, I'm shaming, I'm blaming, I'm trying to control my partners, I'm trying to control the direction of the relationship. That's why I'd end up with partners that couldn't meet my needs. And instead of stepping into my divine feminine, expressing what it is I desire, expressing what it is I want, and allowing my partners to rise to meet me in my fullest, I would demand it or I would shame them and I'd be frustrated when they wouldn't rise to the occasion and show up in the ways I desire. And so I realized through this moment of actually becoming a man in this journey, wow, I have these parts of me, these wounded masculine parts of me that I repress because I don't like the way I see that in other people. And when I acknowledged that, it was deeply healing, Liv, to like catalyze this journey of we are the same. I truly believe masculine and feminine, men, women, gender nonconforming individuals, we are the same. We are all mirrors. We all have masculine and feminine within us. We all want to be ravished And we all need to learn how to ravish because it feels good to give and to receive. And so when I healed first my relationship with my father and with the masculine, when I healed that, and instead of blaming him for not giving me what I needed as a child, now I can take ownership. And how do I bring wholeness to my way of being? How do I hold myself? So everyone who's listening, because these are high level concepts, so I'm going to try to just make it a little tangible here. Think of the masculine, like the roots of a tree, the groundedness of who you are, what you're about, what your mission is on earth, what your passions are. And when you have that solid masculine, then the feminine can dance, she can play, she can express. So in relationship, that's like, okay, I'm going to voice something and not know how it's going to land with my partner. And I may be rejected. I've had that from my lovers. I do something sexy and maybe they reject me. They turn me down. It doesn't land. Ooh, you got some spinach in your teeth, Nicola. Great. But I got my masculine to hold me with safety, where it's like, okay, who cares? I'm sharing my heart because it feels good. I'm giving you that gift because it feels good, and that doesn't stop me. And when we have that balance, that's when our relating becomes beautiful. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but it was sparked from the father dynamic. And then it was just working with the energetics to bring harmony into my way of being, to bring more harmony into my relationships.
I so appreciate that context, because when when some of the listeners that are listening are probably thinking, some of them are familiar with masculine and feminine energy, but it might be a newer concept or a newer topic to some people that are listening in. And so I wanted to ask you a follow-up question to something that you had mentioned, which was around the wounded and the divine, right? The wounded masculine, the wounded feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine. So when you say that contrast, can you share a little bit about what that looks like, what that means?
Yes. Thank you for asking. Bringing me back down to earth. I'm an Aquarius, so I'm always up in the sky, like these high level concepts. So I love that grounding. What's your sign, by the way? Are
I'm
you
a
earth?
Cancer. I'm Cancer.
Okay. You love it. Yeah. Okay. So wounded masculine and feminine. So in our society, we are in a society that favors masculine energy. Now, I want to say that the way that I teach it, because I believe we're all the same, there's no demonizing. It's not men versus women. I don't view it that way. It's a systemic issue. So it favors masculine energy. Now, the wounded masculine is a product of our system, and that's impacted by many movements as we moved from hunter gatherer societies to agricultural societies, the Industrial Revolution. It impacted how masculine and feminine relate to each other. But the wounded masculine is this idea of control. That's one aspect of it. We can control people. We can control our circumstances. We can control our partners. And that's why there's this desire to deeply control. That's why, as a society, we have a hard time being in the unknown. We have a hard time surrendering to what is. And so, to combat that aspect, and I'll speak to more of it in partnership, that's knowing, okay, we are sovereign beings. So all I can do is I can express what it is I desire. And I can be mindful. This is why I love working with the communication. I have to be mindful of how I express, do it in a way that's impactful, that's enticing, to invite you to rise to meet me. But you're ultimately a sovereign being. And that's the difference between how do I become your lover versus how do I, am I mothering you or am I coaching you? And that's never sexy. So the wounded masculine, it's this aspect of control. It's also this energy of I'm going to lead through fear or through force versus through impact. And to blend that with the feminine, to have the healthy masculine and feminine, you think about who are the leaders that are most impactful in the world. When I think of like David Data or Martin Luther King or Russell Brunson, They have what? They have a balance of the masculine and feminine. They were assertive, dominant, powerful, directive. They have their goals, they're action oriented, yet they're sensitive to a room, emotional intelligence. How do I move you through the heart? So wounded masculine, think of it as the control, the domination, the competition. Wounded feminine is the manipulation. It's the martyrdom. It's anything where you're disempowered and you're not operating from your heart and you're not operating from a place of conscious empowerment. So conscious masculine, divine masculine, witnesses without judgment. It's presence. I'm going to be here as a presence and I'm not going to judge you. It's structure. Structure, whether it be in business, I'm creating my systems, my structures in my business, my marketing funnels, my email list. That's masculine energy. Even when you start a business, it's your masculine, your passion, your fuego. I'm going to do out in the world. Now, the feminine is the inward. It's the yin. It's the being. So just like you have the structure in the business, I also need to reflect what's working in my business, what's not, what needs to shift. Same with relationship. What's working, what's not, what needs to shift. How can we refine going inwards? It's also your sense of flow in business and in relationship. So in relationship, if you're dancing with the masculine and feminine, the healthy masculine and feminine, I'm going to assert my desire. But then I'm going to relax and I'm going to ask you, how's that landing for you? I'm going to practice curiosity. I'm going to inquire. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to feel into your energy instead of just penetrating you with my energy. And so it's this dance in communication. It's also a dance of initiating and following. I'm going to initiate intimacy. Maybe, partner, you're sitting on the couch and I run my hand along your shoulder blades. Hey, baby, good evening. Now that requires masculine energy. I'm initiating. But then I pause and let you respond, and you can be in your masculine and I can receive. And it's this dance in partnership of both parties taking action, giving, receiving, initiating, following. What else? There's so many things. So if I were to just wrap it again, think of the masculine like the structure. The feminine is anything that's in motion, emotion, energy in motion, the inward reflection. It's also the active role as masculine, anything that you're doing in partnership, setting up dates, scheduling plans, initiating intimacy, initiating in all sorts of ways versus receiving, following, curiosity, asking questions. That's feminine.
Thank you for that, description and explanation. And it was reminding me of a conversation I was having with a client recently where we were talking about her scheduling or doing like a date night with her partner, and the balance of like, her, for example, she has a kid, saying like, I have, I set up the babysitter, I freed up Saturday night, but then also like giving, the plans to the partner to be like, you can take me on the date, right? Or you can plan, the rest of it, of having some structure, creating some structure with the initiation, like you said, but then also being in that receiving mode of like kind of that push and pull in a relationship too. So that was reminding me of that.
I love that example because now we're actually going to make it tangible here. So with that example, yeah. Now, a wounded feminine energy could say, you never plan the dates. I always plan the dates. Can you plan the dates? Yeah. Now, if you're in also a masculine energy and that maybe doesn't feel good for your feminine, you might say, can you plan the date tonight? I always plan the dates. Yeah. Another way that you can handle it, where you use healthy masculine and invite yourself to receive in the feminine, could be something like, babe, I know you've got so many good ideas in that mind of yours. Why don't you plan Saturday night? Yeah, let's meet at 7. We'll spend the day apart. You just tell me where to be and I'll be there. Now that's like, okay, It's taking masculine energy to assert it. It's quite sexy and intriguing in my book. And then it's like, now you're inviting it for him to step up so you can sink into your feminine and receive. And that's that dance. That's that leadership and partnership. How do we lead so that we can then sink back and receive? And when we're balanced with our energies, we're also balanced with our communication, and we have that softness, that subtlety, so the communication doesn't always have to be so direct.
Yes, and I think this leads right into what I wanted to ask you next, because around communication and around being able to handle conflict. So when I was thinking about your work, I was reflecting back on when I was in my past life and my past job. I went through like a career coaching certification where we would then help people at my company transition into whether they're moving into a leadership role or they want to transition into departments. And so I was working a lot in career coaching, and now I obviously do more like health and mindset coaching, but I notice a similar trend that comes up across whether it's career or whether it's personal, where it's that challenge of having difficult conversations. And the career side, it can look like I need to have, a conversation with my boss. I need to ask for a pay raise. I need to, let someone go. But then, in the personal relationships, it begins to be like, something is bothering me, or I noticed you did this and it made me feel this way. So when people think of relationships, I find that they're often thinking about, I have an issue with a relationship, some type of conflict, some type of thing that's that's not said, right? It's sitting in this like world of what's unsaid. And so I know that sort of conscious conflict is something that you explore. So I would love to hear a little bit about your work in this area. Like, how do you recommend having that masculine feminine energy, but also approaching conflict?
Yeah, it's a great question, Liv. And conflict. So a mentor of mine, Esther Perel, who I don't know if you know her work. Yes, I see you
Yes, love
smiling.
her.
She's amazing. And she talks about, in one of her older talks, she's talked about how intimacy is built in the repair of conflict. And what I loved about that so much is conflict, the point of it can deepen relationship and intimacy so much when we can navigate it effectively, because the point of it is, how do we see each other? How do we get two people with different perspectives to truly see each other? This touches a wound for me. This is painful for me. This is why it activated me, because I never felt respected as a child, and respect is my biggest trigger in relationship. And partner, when we're out at a party and we're in a group of people and you make eye contact with everyone but me, it triggers that respect. And then they can see you, because it's never about the conflict. It's always about what we make it mean, what it means for us. And when we can identify what is it means for us and the impact it has on us, and then ask for what it is we desire, that's how you're going to get what you desire in partnership. So there's an approach I love to conflict. It's called the DEAR method. And this is an easy thing that you can take away for all of you listening to really be able to implement immediately. So the D would be describe. So let's say you're at a party, and let's say your partner's chatting with someone, you come up, and maybe they don't really introduce you in the way you desire. Maybe you want them to put their arm around you, and maybe they just leave you kind of standing there for a moment and you have to introduce yourself, and it doesn't feel good. So the D would be, I'm going to describe at a later time what happened without emotional attachment. Describe what's going on. Partner, when I came up to you at the party and you didn't put your arm around me and I had to introduce myself. That's the D. That's it. Describe. E, express. That's the emotion. What do you feel? It made me feel that you're not proud of me, that you're not proud that you're my partner. Yeah. A, assert, because we want to keep it concise. You can say a little bit more, but you want to keep it concise. Assert, what is the desire? What I'd like is, and now when we do this, we speak to the behavior. Because when you speak to the behavior, you don't put your partner on the defense, they don't take it personal, and then they can shift the behavior. What would I like? What I'd like is when I come up to you at a party, that you put your arm around me and that you introduce me to who you're talking to. Okay, the R for the dear is reinforce. Why does it matter? Now, here's where you got to get smart. We got to think about the emotional intelligence. What do they care about? What does partner care about? For me, I would say, because it would make me feel more connected to you. They care about you feeling connected to them, or it would make me feel more desire for you. It would make me feel more feelings of love for you. We feel more connected intimately. And then it's speaking to that. So it wires in for them why it's important to do it, because people always forget. Couples, they'll say, but you love me, don't you love me? Wouldn't you want to do it? Yeah, but we're all human beings. We all have motivators. And when you understand what motivates people, then you know in a particular conflict what angles to speak to invite them to want to shift.
I'm writing all this down, and I know people will as well, like taking notes of, what is this? And I was even thinking as you were saying that, how it can go across a lot of different types of conversations. Yes, romantically, it can be in a friend, situation with family, in the job, environment as well. And so I know this is a big question, but if you were to think about like the most common types of conflict that you see, I know mainly the work you do is with couples, also with singles, but with couples as well. And if you were to think about the main like patterns, the things that you're like everyone, regardless of, age or whatever it might be, like the common things are coming up in the work that you do, what would you say are like the common challenging conversations people are trying to have?
Yeah. I love this question. It's challenging me to really now reflect. What's the most common thing? One thing that's been really, really present, I actually think it's one of the most common things, and this comes up in my own conflicts with my lovers, with my family, with my friends. Most of the time, people don't have an intimacy issue, it's a communication issue. And it comes from miscommunications. Two things, it's twofold. My answer is twofold. One is the miscommunication. People just want to be validated. And oftentimes in conflict, it's less about them needing to be right. It's less about even figuring it out. And it's more about, I see you. I understand why that hurt you. I understand how that could have felt if it was you standing there when I didn't introduce you. I understand how it could have felt, partner, when I said that I would take care of cleaning the apartment and I didn't do it and I didn't follow through on it. And validating that and seeing them and understanding that in its own breath, giving that spaciousness. And then maybe sharing, and I said I would clean the apartment and I didn't. You know why? Because work got busy for me and it was deprioritized in my mind. And I'm sorry about that. And it's like, okay, I'm going to pause and I'm going to acknowledge you. And then I'm going to share my perspective, because the point of communication is really to, how do I illuminate your perspective, partner? And how do I share my own? But when people get caught up in, the point of it is I'm going to share my needs. I need you to see my needs, that I forget about understanding yours. That's when the tensions keep going. The other thing I was going to speak to that I see often in my work is, a lot of times it's actually less about the words and it's all about the tone and the body language. This is why in my work I do a lot with nonverbals, because there was a couple that I was working with, and there's this dynamic of whenever the woman, and they've given me permission to speak about this. Obviously, it's confidential, not using names here, but whenever she wanted intimacy, the way that she would ask for it and initiate it turned her partner off. And when we dug into it, we realized it was a tone issue. It was the tone of voice. It was the body language that was creating closure for him. Now, what does that tell me? This applies not just to intimacy. This applies to all situations. when you're in a group of people. Maybe you don't resonate with someone's energy. Maybe it's because of their tone and the way that they're speaking. Or maybe if they were speaking in a lighter tone, it would feel more inviting. If they paused, if they smiled. And so it's also the communication piece is also being conscious of the voice and the cadence and the tone. And are you making eye contact? And are you in conflict? It's really helpful for couples to, I like to say, bring in a third activity. So this is why if you're going on a hike and you're having a serious conversation, it's often helpful because it's less forcing. I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, you must have an answer. You're not going to put your partner as much on the defense, which if you both have your attention slightly on a third activity. And so it's noticing the other dynamics that are at play in a conversation or in a conflict and how that influences it.
I love that you mentioned that hike, the third activity piece, because that's definitely something that I've suggested to people as who are in basically preparing for challenging conversations, is to really think about the environment and like the setting of where you're having these, not like on your way out and there's a deadline or there's a time crunch or there's kids around, or like how do you set the space and the environment to have a deeper conversation and to not feel rushed or to not feel like super distracted. So I love like the nature element of like going for a walk or a hike or going to the beach or whatever it might be, just to have something else to focus on. It's such a good reminder too. One of the things that I am noticing a lot that comes up in my client sessions related to relationships is the tendency for, we'll talk, I'll always hear, what's the situation, give me, like the context. And what I notice is that there's a big piece of typically the context that is living in this, I call it like the arena of assumption, because it's a lot of, I think they're going to respond this way, or they probably think this, or all of it is like not fact checked. It's very much like I am assuming that this is the case. And so when it comes to communication, I know you talked a little bit about it in like the expression and even just in that dear method that you talked about. But how do you notice this with communication with couples? Is like, where is there like that element of assumption that's coming in that maybe needs to be broken down a bit?
Yeah, I love that comment. And I also love that you're doing this work as well with your clients because it's so needed. The assumptions, we make so many assumptions. We live in our minds, and it's knowing, what do we make it mean? What do I make it mean when you come home, partner, and you don't look me in the eyes and you're not in a good mood? I make it mean you're not attracted to me. I make it mean you're bored with me. I make it mean you're frustrated. I make it mean I'm not important to you. And naming it from that place. And this way we're not making the other person wrong. We're taking ownership of our experience, and we're also giving them spaciousness to then share. And tell me, how was your day? What's going on for you? I'm here. And it's how do we create psychological safety in our partnerships for each other to fully show up? Because that's what we want. And so even if, let's say, you're at a party and maybe your partner makes you jealous, what do you make it mean? I make it mean that you're looking at someone else over me, that you like that person more than me. That's vulnerable to say, but that's better than you are being inappropriate. And like, the more that you keep doing that, I'm going to leave you, or I don't like when you act that way, because then you're putting it on you, partner, and you don't want them to go on the defense, and they naturally will if you blame them. So when you voice what you make it mean, even if you feel there's a boundary that's violated that you need to talk about, which is fair, it's first coming from that angle of what it means for you, what you're afraid of, what it's the wound it's touching for you, letting them respond, because they may say, hey, yes, that person was flirting with me and I wasn't giving into it. Or yes, I could feel it. I didn't know how to handle it. Yeah, no, I didn't feel it at all. No, this is someone I know from years ago and we have a connection. but you want to create spaces that are invitations for your partner to receive you and then share what their truth is. Because that's what we want to do. We want to uncover each other's truth. You don't want to have a situation where your partner doesn't share. And oftentimes I see with couples, and this is why I also bring humor and play into my work, is because they can be so serious and heavy at times. And when it is that way, if you're with a more avoidant energy, they're going to close, they're going to avoid. And so it's how do you really create spaces, and humor goes a long way with avoidance of how do you express and then allow them to meet it. So for example, with an avoidant, that can even be something like, let's say your partner went on a trip, a business trip, and they didn't text you as much as you wanted them to. Now you could say, you didn't text me, or like, I like when you text me every night, good night. You can go serious. Sometimes there's a place for that, but sometimes that can feel needy to an avoidant. They're going to close. They're going to feel constricted. They're going to feel like they're losing their freedom. So instead it can be something like, tell me next time you talk to them. Maybe it's like, tell me how much you missed me. Yeah. Like a little bit of like the dark feminine route. That's where I naturally lie. So for me, that one would come natural. Then it's like, it's a little bit of play. Yeah, I missed you so much. Tell me how much you miss me. And it's inviting them to share their heart, but it's less pointed. It's less direct. And even if you want them to text you more often, it can be something like, wow, I thought of you every night. I was up all night meditating with that picture of you and my candle, awaiting the next time that you would reach out. Make it a little humorous, make it a little extreme so that they can feel, okay, she's saying she misses me. I'm going to respond to it. And then you could say, maybe we can text every night so I don't have to wait up all night meditating with a candle the next time you go on a business trip. Yeah, or if you're jealous, it's like, ooh, that person really activated me. I don't think she wants to see Kali come out when she's be talking to my man. And that's saying, hey, babe, I'm jealous. Kali's going to come out if this keeps happening, right? But it's subtle. It's more subtle. And that's what I love about play and subtlety. We don't always have to be so direct to get our point across.
And just the tone, like what you mentioned before, like the body language, the tone, and people who are, listening to this episode, it'll be a video episode, so you can see, right, how the energy changes with these like subtle shifts to tone, to body language, to how it's coming across makes such a big difference in the message that's delivered too. So I appreciate that. I was looking at your website and sort of your work and the types of offers that you have as you were preparing for this conversation. And I noticed that you had the Queen Bee Mastermind, and you also had the Kingdom Come Mastermind, and that you also work, with men in that capacity of like working with couples, yes, but also working just with women and just with men. And I was looking at my podcast listeners actually, and I noticed that 80% are women and 20% are men, which I was actually surprised by how many men are listening to the podcast, because primarily a lot of my audience, I feel like, that comes to my events, so at least here on Guam, it's typically, the women are leading the charge here. But I do feel like that the work to be done with men is so abundant, right? And it's such an interesting space to be in. And I, don't work one-on-one with a lot of men. And so I wanted to, even in a group setting, so I wanted to hear, like, what's been your experience working with men? Like, how do those masterminds differ in terms of what you're focusing on with the men, male clients, and just like the themes you see in that world?
Great question. I've never got asked this question. I love that, Liv. For me, the dynamic of the women and men that I work with, the men, so it's an interesting dynamic, and this is something I often see in relationships. Yes, I don't want to hide it, even though I'm like, ooh, some nerves around it. Yeah. It's women who are more in their masculine, and it's men who are more in their feminine energy. Now, what do I mean by that? This is a common dynamic. I know it. I've been there. This is why I do this work. I can go there. It's also the way that we've been conditioned to behave in the world. But so the work with women is how do I teach women how to learn how to tune into their feminine and tune into their healthy masculine so that they can receive more in the ways that they desire. So they don't feel like they have to lead as much in a relationship as they may. With the men that I work with, it's teaching them how to step more into their power, both in the communication, in the bedroom dynamics, leading in career, in all areas of life. And how do they do it in ways that inspire trust and surrender from their partner? Because oftentimes what can happen is, as women, we can show up in ways that perpetuate the dynamics that we want to get away from. So we can show up in ways that unintentionally prevent our partners from leading. Or maybe we overextend, we overgive, we lead too much. We have too much control. We want too much control. And that prevents us from truly receiving. We don't know how to maybe ask for what we want in a way that's more invitational versus direct. So it comes off more as a demand, as an order, as a request, as opposed to an invitation. And so from a communication aspect, I'm working with women to learn how to use more of that invitational language, to learn how to release some of that control, because it doesn't feel good when feel like we have to hold that. And to get our partners to be able to see us in what it is that we desire and need, and doing it and asking for it in seductive ways and impactful ways that are influential and invite your partner to want to rise to meet you, because they're also a sovereign being. And if you're demanding something, they're going to probably lean the other way. If you're over giving and overdoing, your partner's not going to show up in the ways that you desire because you're doing it all. They may also feel complacent in certain ways. I'm just not going to do it because everything I do, you're going to critique or comment on. And so it's learning how to master as a woman these dynamics so that your partner feels empowered, because you really want a relationship where it's two fully sovereign beings who are powerful and empowered. That's what feels sexy. That's what feels intimacy and passion in partnership. And in my work with the men, it's teaching them how to command a room with their energy, with their presence, how to powerfully initiate in bed, how to initiate conversations and intimacy, emotional intimacy. That's what I mean by conversations. How to initiate emotional intimacy, how to get their partner to relax. So I make it real simple and tangible, because it's hard when I'm speaking and not giving examples here. Let's say you get home. You get home from a long day of work. You walk in the door. Your partner's like, "Oh, hey, babe, did you get the hummus?" Like, she starts asking you a bunch of questions of the things that you were supposed to do, for that day. Maybe you didn't get the hummus. Now, if you're not grounded in that solid masculine core, this is what I'll teach you, then you might respond, "No, I didn't get the hummus, and here's why." Or like, "Why are you, I just got home." You might react. You lose your center. You don't want to do that as a masculine. You want to keep that center. And so how instead do you put her at ease? "Hey, babe. Good evening, beautiful. I'm so happy to see you." Maybe you walk over, you give her a little kiss, you put your hand on her thigh. "I'm going to get to the hummus. Yeah, can you let me settle in here for a moment?" Settle in. "I didn't get the hummus yet. Yeah. I'm tired. I had a long day. What do you say I pick up the hummus this weekend when I have more spaciousness? How does that feel for you?" It's like using your groundedness, your center, also using a little bit of play, and owning your experience to put her at ease. And that's your real divine masculine. "Have a good evening, beautiful. I'm going to help you relax. I'm going to deflect." Or if she's, on you about something, how do you deflect it in a way where she's feeling seen. You're not avoiding it. You're not deflecting by avoiding. You're acknowledging it, and you're also humanizing yourself. Give me a moment. Let me settle in here for a moment. What do you need right now? You're tense? You need a massage? What can I do for you? Oh, I sense you, because the masculine is also the consciousness. It's that penetrating energy. I sense you, babe. What's going on? Are you anxious? What do you need? How can I put you at ease? Yeah, I know I said that I would take care of it and I didn't. I'm sorry about that. What would be better for me next time? How should I communicate with you? And it's recentering the conversation. It's using that consciousness, understanding what is also beneath her reactions. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it fear it's going to fall on her, that she's going to have to take care of it, that she's not feeling taken care of? And seeing through that, or asking questions about it, and bringing her back down through your grounded, embodied self.
Yeah, and it's just the validation at the end of the day. Like, people want to feel understood on both ends, right? Want to be like, I see you, I hear you, I see you, I hear you, right? And coming together. And I love just that reminder of how, like, that play and humor goes such a long way. It goes such a long way of like saying what you need to say, but having it be in a way that lands a little bit softer with the person. And so I know a lot of people listening will really resonate with that, and just notice the next time they have. I love the example of someone coming home, or a partner coming home, and going right into the to-do list, right? I'm guilty of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and so cool. I'm sure to get to see both sides of like working with women and men, and then seeing the couples come together. And so, I would love to know, as we wrap up shortly here, I would love to know, like, not only what you're doing right now in terms of how can people work with you, but I also would love to know, like, where you kind of see yourself going next. Like, what's the next evolution of your work, or maybe something that's been exciting that's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I love that so much. So I'll start with how people can work with me, and then I'll share about the horizon. 'Cause I like that flow. Is yeah, Instagram is the best way to find me. Shoot me a DM if you're digging this conversation. You have any questions from it. I always love to riff. I love to chat. NicolaNavon.com is my website, and Nicola Navon's my Instagram. And the work that I do one-on-one work with individuals and with couples. So I have a program for individuals. I have a program for couples called Sacred Union, to take you through this journey of coming into deeper union with each other, working on the communication, working on the connection, also some sexual practices, working on the connection and the physical chemistry as well. So it's this holistic approach to creating a space where you could truly deepen in intimacy and ignite passion, bringing in the humor, bringing in the play. And then I also have these group programs, these masterminds, Queen Bee, Kingdom Come, which I will most likely do again sometime in 2025, TBD on the exact date. But yeah, and then the group programs. And then what's new on the horizon that I'm so excited about is I'm breaking into public speaking. Yeah, I'm really excited to take this work to the stage, because I also coach leaders in the corporate world, hone their leadership skills, learn how to motivate and inspire their teams. And so bridging the work that I do with couples, the work with individuals, and the work that I do one-on-one with leaders in the corporate setting, I'm going to take that to the stage and do talks around leadership in both relationship and organizations, because it bridges. Everything we experience in relationship plays out in our relationships in the workplace. Yeah. The home life impacts the workplace impacts the home life. And so bridging this together, and how do we take these tools of communication and of impactful leadership and the art of leading through visioning, leading through the art of seduction, leading through how to touch someone emotionally and move someone emotionally. And how do we do that both in partnership and at the organizational level? And so I'm really, really excited about this next step. And it's a beautiful journey as I'm also working on my book around the masculine and feminine. And so, yeah, just so much moving and so much shaking. And I'm really excited for what's to come.
So exciting. That sounds like such a natural evolution into leadership, and exciting about the book too. Definitely keep me posted when that is on the horizon, or when that's, making its way. I have a book club here, so I always love to include book club recommendations around, relationships, around habits, around mindset. And so this, I feel like, would be such a good one for it.
I
So
love it.
I'm so glad that we got to connect. Have such a juicy conversation. I feel like there's so much, so much that people can draw from this and really go a lot deeper in relationships. They really are such mirrors back to our own work, and like the work that we have on ourselves, and how we communicate and how we share our desire, our gifts, our purpose in the world. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with our ENA community. And thank you again for being on here.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Liv.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please rate and review, and don't forget to subscribe. Learn more at enawellnesscollective.com and connect with us on Instagram at Ena Wellness Collective.